All right, let's jump right into this. What if I told you that every single trip you've ever taken, whether it's to the grocery store, or halfway across the world, or even to the moon, what if it never actually happened in a physical sense? Today's explainer gets into a really radical theory about reality, pulled from a 1969 lecture by the mystic Neville Goddard.
So this is the central, totally mind-bending idea. And get this, Neville Goddard himself was given this message in a dream way back in 1954. But being a rational person, he couldn't just accept it. He literally wrote it down, put it away, and just waited. Because, how could this possibly be true?
And this sets up the core conflict in his whole philosophy. On one side, you have the world of reason, our everyday reality. We watch astronauts travel 500,000 miles and come back. We get in our cars and drive. It's tangible. But on the other side, you have this world of revelation, which says, nope, all of that is basically an illusion. It's just a shift in your consciousness.
So let's really dig into this puzzling revelation. How did Neville, a guy who described himself as a rational being, even start to grapple with an idea that seems to defy all logic?
You know, what's so interesting is that Neville doesn't hide his own skepticism. He makes it part of the story. Years after getting that message in the dream, he's watching TV and sees the Apollo astronauts return to Earth. He sees the physical proof with his own eyes. And still, that revelation from years ago just keeps echoing in his head. They did not move. It makes the whole thing a lot more relatable, because even the guy teaching it had a hard time believing it.
So this just leads to the million-dollar question, right? If our rational, physical world is only part of the story, then what is actually going on? If we aren't the ones flying through space, then who or what is having this experience? And that brings us to the next massive piece of the puzzle. We've got to identify the dreamer who's dreaming this whole thing. For the answer, Neville actually points to Scripture. He asks a simple question. If you were dreaming and someone in your dream asked you who was dreaming, what would you say? You'd say, I am. Well, according to the Bible, God's eternal name is
I am. And that's the absolute linchpin. You cannot separate the dreamer from God. That fundamental awareness you have right now, the feeling you call I am, in this philosophy, that is the name of God, operating right through you, as you.
So to be super clear, the power that's dreaming your entire life isn't some far-off, separate being. Neville argues it's your very own consciousness, that basic awareness of being that you call I. And what that means is that you are directly connected to the one and only creative power in the universe. Okay, so this is where the whole idea really scales up. We're not just talking about what happens when you're asleep in bed at night. The theory is that our entire waking life is also a kind of dream. And Neville just throws this question out there to challenge everything we think is real. You know how you wake up from a crazy dream and realize you never left your bed? Well, he's suggesting there's a much deeper self inside all of us that will one day wake up from this dream of life and have that exact same realization. So why this particular dream? Well, in this view, our world is a kind of school of educated darkness. It's designed to be a place of struggle and limitation because the dreamer within, God, is basically sound asleep, and it's learning through all of our human experiences. All the chaos and conflict of life is actually what's supposed to eventually prod the dreamer to wake up.
And this brings us to the absolute climax of this spiritual journey, the Great Awakening. We're talking about waking up from the dream of life itself.
Neville says he actually experienced this himself back in 1959, and he described it as a very clear four-step process. First, this intense vibration takes over your body, all centered in your head. Then, you become aware that you're literally sealed inside your own skull, like a tomb. From there, you just instinctively know to push your way out, and this leads to a full-on spiritual rebirth, with all this incredible symbolism playing out.
And here is the most critical takeaway of all. In this philosophy, the resurrection isn't some historical event from 2,000 years ago that you're supposed to worship. No, it's a deeply personal, psychological drama that unfolds inside of you. It's the dreamer, your own basic I am, finally waking up to what it really is, as you.
Okay, so if we are the dreamers, what does that mean for us right now, while we're still in the thick of the dream? Well, this is where the whole theory becomes a really practical tool you can use.
See, if life is just a fluid dream, then you, the dreamer, can start directing it. The method's pretty simple. First, you have to know exactly what you want. Then, you construct a short little scene in your mind that implies your wish is already a fact. And here's the key. You loop that mental scene over and over again with feeling until it feels completely real. Then you just let it go, you drop it, and you trust that you've successfully planted the seed for a new direction in your dream.
You know, the poet Shelley just captured this idea perfectly. The one who has awakened is free. But the rest of us? We're still lost in these stormy visions, fighting with phantoms. And what are those phantoms? They're just shadows, ultimately. Shadows that are projections of ourselves. We're really just fighting with our own self-created illusions.
And that really leaves us with one final powerful question. If you take all this in, the idea that you're the dreamer and your reality is just a movement of your mind, it puts all the power and all the responsibility right back on you. So the real question isn't whether any of this is actually true. The question is what you would do if it were. If your life is a dream, what are you going to choose to dream next?